All right, so we have started recording. So from this point forward, we have to be careful about what we say. Tim, with your permission, I'll put this up on YouTube after we're done.
No worries.
And share it for the world. There are those that are part of the group that just are unable to join us when we have these meetings. This is the February meeting of the Utah SharePoint Users Group, and we're excited to have all of you here. As always, I will invite you to bring a friend. Tim and I did not talk about this beforehand. I used to have a slide deck, and one of the slides on that deck said, please mute yourself. And I'm going to propose that with a group this size, when you have a question, speak up. And if you're shy, I've got the meeting here on my laptop. And if you want to chat it to me, I will be the one that interrupts and tell Tim that there's been a question.
I was about to suggest anyway. Well, I did not prepare like a million of slides. Technically, I only have one slide. I'm just showing stuff. And I would love to keep that as like a more conversational level, sort of. So if you have any question, just shout. No worries.
So, and let's do this just for fun. The other thing that I warned Tim was that we sometimes got an eclectic mix of job titles. We had developers and IT pros and admins and business analysts. So if you would throw in the chat what it is that you think is your primary job title, we can then, when I say we, I mean you, Tim, we can adjust this next hour to be more specific to the majority of the group, but we will also get those that are in the minority. We meet every Tuesday, the last fourth Tuesday of the month. I'll put this recording up on YouTube. If you've got your invite for this month, you'll see a link to last month's presentation. That link will then get you to the SharePoint Utah Users Group channel on YouTube. And so when I do get around to posting this, it'll show up if you follow us. And if not, I'll put a link to it in next month's presentation. Speaking of next month, we don't have a topic. So if there's something you would like to learn, if there is some special skill that you would like to add to your quiver, we will do our very best to go out and find the best person in the world to teach that to you. That's anything related to any Microsoft product, not just SharePoint. So let's talk about Tim. When we were talking about adaptive cards, and I don't remember who it was that suggested we do adaptive cards, but somebody said, I'll bet that would be something that would really resonate with our members. We started looking around, and late one night, Christian Buckley said, hey, Tim looks like the guy. Let's reach out to Tim. And Tim almost immediately, without doing the math, to figure out that it would be way after midnight his time when we met, agreed to come and present adaptive cards to us. And so I did some research so that I could figure out just who the heck Tim was. And it turns out Tim is the best person in the world we could have gotten to come and talk to us about adaptive cards. And so we're honored to have you with us, Tim. We're excited to listen to you. As we were making sure that all the audio visual was working, Tim mentioned that he is the very first ever adaptive cards customer, and that Microsoft had reached out to him at some point and said, hey, we see you talking about this adaptive cards thing. Let's build that together. And so, as I said, we have the best person in the world we could have come teach us the magic of adaptive cards. And in the invite, there'll be a bunch of links to the various ways that you can reach out to and follow Tim, including his blog that he's very active on. We will go maybe an hour, 45 minutes, an hour and 15, whatever strikes Tim as being the right amount of time, and then we'll ask some questions thereafter. Following that, those of us that are here in person will sit and talk about those of you that are not. And I say that to invite you to come and show up here at Journey Team next month when we have whatever topic it is you suggest that we have. There is, just to give you an extra incentive to come, in addition to the great company, there's a room right over here that is just chock full of food and soda and water. And it's there's nobody that guards it. I just had a bag of M&Ms and it was delightful. So if you can, plan to come and join us next month in person. Any questions? Tim, the floor is yours, and I'm going to sit down and shut up.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Let me just go ahead and share my screen there. So, like I said, I don't have like a million of slides prepared. I technically only have one as a small introduction just to show you a little bit more about who I am. My name is Tim Kardenmach. I'm Microsoft MVP for developer technologies, which was a bit tricky because developer technologies is usually stuff like .NET Core and all that, which I also work with. But the main reason I'm developer technologies is because adaptive cards didn't fit anywhere else. That's a little bit of a problem in Microsoft in general, because adaptive cards is such a general topic and used by so many departments in Microsoft that Microsoft itself doesn't really know where it belongs to. That's just as a small introduction. As explained, I was sort of the first guy to work with adaptive cards because I had sort of similar idea. I wrote a blog post about that, and then Microsoft reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we are working on that. Don't you want to join us on that and help a little bit?" And since then, I'm like, I was the first guy to contribute on the GitHub. I was actually speaking on Ignite in 2019 about that. So the last Ignite that actually happened in person. I was the first non-MVP back then to speak on Ignite about adaptive cards. That was a great experience. In my other life, sort of, I work for Maximago in Germany. We are just a normal consulting / software development agency, nothing special. I created madewithcards.io, which is just a page you should really try to look at if you want to learn things about adaptive cards. There's not a ton of content on there, but it's just like there's some example cards. I can show you that briefly for a second. There's some example cards, and here there's a lot more cards than you would see on the other pages. I go into details later, but there are a lot of example cards, and we also have these getting started things here. So we try to group that a little bit, like where you're coming from. Just the basics about adaptive cards as such. If you want to use adaptive cards in Teams or Office 365, there's some recommended Microsoft Learn content, some recommended reading blog posts, and the same for Power Automate. Sort of. Well, we don't have Learn content for adaptive cards in Power Automate. That's coming, sort of. So it's always worth going on the page. But let's just start from the beginning, really. So what I'm interested is just, did you guys ever hear about adaptive cards? Is that like completely new to all of you, or are you like, I know basically what it is, and and just need to get like something where to start? So I can start from scratch, like you don't know anything, or would you say now we're a little bit aware of what it is basically, but just give us the details?
Given that we're going to post this up on YouTube, Tim, let's do a 2-minute refresher of the basics of power cards, and maybe talk about the ways that people are using them.
Yeah. So adaptive cards as general are explained by Microsoft as small snippets of UI, and pretty much that's what it is. Adaptive cards are like in, you can see that here, that for example is an adaptive card. I have another example here. All these, so this part, so each person, and when you click here, that edit, the whole edit form, that's all in all adaptive cards. So basically you can take any JSON based content. If you don't know what JSON is, yeah, looks like that, and you can describe UI based on JSON. So you can use JSON to build these cards, and there's a lot more behind. Like there's technically data binding on the card, and it's really advanced. But really on the low level, it's just UI snippets made with JSON. The interesting piece is that more than likely all of you have seen adaptive cards already. Most likely without even knowing it's an adaptive card, because these days adaptive cards are like in a ton of Microsoft products. If you're using, don't have an example to show right now, I think, but if you're using Viva Connections, for example, that's literally completely made with adaptive cards. The Windows 11 widgets, for example, that weather card I have here, that's an adaptive card. I think the to-do card is not, but well, there's more than I pretty much only have that example right now, but that's an adaptive card. If you use any Microsoft Teams app, do I have Teams to show right now? No, I don't have Teams open. If you basically any Microsoft Teams app really is using adaptive cards. So whenever you have some sort of bot you're talking to about, you get these bot messages, whatever they might look like, that's all adaptive cards. There is older versions of that producing similar results, but most modern bots and apps in Teams use adaptive cards. So whenever you have been using a bot in past, you probably received an adaptive card already. So that's the really basics about it. Adaptive cards can display data, so you can just use it to like display some form of data. It doesn't really matter. We go into that later, but you can only use it as you can also use it as some sort of input form. So you can, like in this example, that's just a sample. It's not working, but you could send someone a card to ask for feedback, to do a questionnaire, whatever you think. Anything you would normally put in a form, you can do with adaptive cards as well in Teams. Yeah, that's pretty much the basics of what adaptive cards are. Many people hear the word card and automatically think of like something like what you see right now, like a card in some form of chat tool or yeah, whatever similar. But as I showed earlier in that example here, it's not really cards. That's just the name of the product, but you can build any UI with it. So I've seen people build a whole application based on adaptive cards. That is more than possible. That's something Microsoft isn't really promoting because that's not the primary use case for Microsoft, but that's definitely more than possible. Because as I said, if you look at that's for the developers, but if you look at the code behind all this, there's not a single input form, there's not a single text field or anything here. That's all made with adaptive cards. And that should probably explain enough of what adaptive cards are. So what you can use adaptive cards for, especially when you're a power user, for example, if we think of Microsoft Flow, for example, you can actually create really nice quick flows using adaptive cards. I have this example. I hope it's still working. It should work. Let me check that. So
Uh-oh. I think Tim hit the wrong button. We'll see him back in just a minute, I am sure. Yeah. I cannot tell you how many times I have wanted to stop sharing and end of the meeting. I just have Sam. Yeah, the soda's calling my name. Yeah, but I'm trying to be good. There's the ice soda.
Yep, sorry. That happens when you open Teams in the same in the same session with a different tenant. It just kicks you out.
Oh, we thought maybe you went to hit the end sharing button.
No, that's well, I'm using Chrome, and I have my Chrome, well, different profiles, and when you open multiple tenants in the same profile, it just disconnects one of each. So we were talking about flow. So there's first of all, if you start with flow, there's tons of examples with adaptive cards, and you should probably try them to find out what's going on. If you go to if you create a new flow, start from template, and you just search for adaptive cards. If it does something today, so there's a ton of examples, like in combination with Microsoft Forms, when a new form entry is added, send a card. When a new item in SharePoint is created, whatever. There's tons of examples in Flow, and pretty much all of these are useful to learn something. So when you want to know how all the things are working in Power Automate, it really makes sense to go through a few of these templates just to see what the templates are doing and how they are working. I have my sample flow I was using here. It's really nothing special. It's just yeah. Flow is not really fast today. Okay, we try it differently. I've built a flow that just does nothing special. Whenever a new message is added to a channel, it is supposed to send a card. As you can see, it does nothing. Okay, just do it like that. Maybe it worked then. If it doesn't work right now, well, that's what it usually does and how it should work. But it does not. Okay. Okay, let's try it. Oh yeah, it did, but it didn't want to, for whatever reason, it didn't want to show my card. But that's how that's normally working. You just use that action, post your own adaptive card as a flow bot to the channel.
If you scroll up, Tim, are there stuff in the history where it did work?
Yeah, there I have. Okay. Okay, here, that for example, that was one of the flows I tried. That's one. That's an adaptive card. It doesn't look that great. It's not nicely formatted, but that is actually an adaptive card I used in the flow. You can also build more complex flows. I use that action, post your own adaptive card as a flow bot to the channel. There's also another action which is called post a message to adaptive cards and wait for the response. And on the Made with Cards page, there are a few blog entries made by Tomasz Positek, who is actually a Power Platform genius. He's building crazy flows, and he has some great examples on what the things you can do with that. So basically, this is doing exactly what you think it does. It sends an adaptive card to any channel and can collect user input. So you can actually have a flow that sends a card and waits for user input, whatever long it takes. So even if the user takes like 3 days to respond to the card, the flow will then continue to run after 3 days. There's no timeout here. Well, there is technically a timeout, but that's really long. But yeah, okay. Our platform seems to have some issues right now. Lovely. In general, that's how it would work. That's not even my channels. Yeah, whatever. So in general, that's what it would work, and you can build really complex flows with it. But as we want to talk about adaptive cards as such, one thing you guys should install in Teams because it's really helpful is App Studio. App Studio is normally for to build Teams apps. Just as you can create the manifest, you can create a bot, and that's just to help you build Teams apps. But App Studio also has that lovely card editor where you can just create adaptive cards. For whatever reason, everything is not working today. Where you can create adaptive cards, you can play with them. You can see how the adaptive cards will look, and the thing is, you can send the card to yourself. So you can design a card, you can play with a card, and then you can send the card to yourself, and the bot will send you the card. That's the card I just used, and that really helps, like understanding the how adaptive cards work, and helps you to see the final result of your card. Even if you're working in SharePoint, I really use the app really often because it really helps see how the card will feel and look for the user. So that's really recommended to install the app. If you are more a code guy and more like a JSON guy, like I said earlier, you can more than build a card completely in JSON. You don't have to use any drag and drop designer. There's also a VS Code extension which I built that pretty much does exactly the same. There's no drag and drop. There's no fancy stuff. It's just yeah, whatever you write in JSON will appear as a card. That's also linked on the Made with Cards.io page. So when you like to work on in JSON and not drag and drop, maybe the extension is something that really helps you to work with adaptive cards.
Tim?
Yeah.
Do you find that you start with the drag and drop and then go edit it by hand to get it refined?
You can, absolutely. That's actually what can actually make that a little bit larger. That's what I usually do as well, honestly, because well, I'm sort of a mixed guy. I work with the designer and I work with JSON. It's just for Power Automate you need JSON. Power Automate doesn't have any nice editor. So what you can only do is you take the JSON from the designer and paste it into Power Automate. So you have to use the designer or have to use JSON anyway. There's no designer in Power Automate as such. So I know many people who just work with the designer and then refine things in code. When you're working on really complex cards, actually let me I think that's the one. Yeah. So that's Vesa. Vesa is the head behind the Microsoft Pattern and Practices team. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. That's just a community project working on various things, extensions, and pretty much helping other people. And that's all adaptive cards. So all these are adaptive cards. So you can see what is technically possible when you're designing an adaptive card. But doing something like that tends to get really difficult in the drag and drop designer. So all these are made by mixing both. The reason for that is because, especially when you have a lot of columns, for example, things tend to get really tricky in the drag and drop designer, and it becomes really clunky to get exactly the place you want to have something in. You can move it around here. Okay. okay, that used to work. It's not working. And then the only reason to properly align things is in JSON, really. So simple cards, small cards, just especially read-only, just text, can be done in the designer really fast. But if you work on more complex cards, you have to probably do it in JSON at some point, because otherwise you will always run into issues with drag and drop. Yeah. But as you can see, well, the normal adaptive cards examples are quite ugly in a way because it's just simple technical examples. But as you can see here, you can get really, really beautiful results with adaptive cards as well. It just requires a lot more effort to get a card look like that.
It may be a designer's eye.
That's the thing, yeah. The idea behind that and the idea behind adaptive cards in general is that the experience we have here, so the adaptive cards IO designer, is actually more for designer guys. So more for like for yeah, let's call them citizen developers, people who want to properly design a card, but not for developers. And there are some, I'm not sure what exactly, but I heard they are actually working on something where you can share, where you can collaboratively work on a card. So actually a designer can start working on the card and then send the JSON layout, send the JSON code to a developer to work with it. Because yes, in many cases, you probably want to have some UX guy or some designer to actually create the card, because developers don't create examples like that. That's just, yeah, I know that for myself. We tend to not be that beautiful.
We don't care what it looks like as long as it works.
That's the thing. Yeah, it's yeah. So all these examples are taken from Viva Connections. For the SharePoint guys, I don't have an example for that right now, but I know there is. I had that open. Okay, exactly. That's actually, yeah, that's made it into the official Microsoft Docs. I can send you the link. There is an SPFX extension that was built by an MVP, and people loved it, and it sort of made it into the official documentation, and it's sort of an official thing by now that allows you to use adaptive cards in SharePoint components pretty well. Works. I used it myself, and it works really well. Last time I checked, the documentation is also pretty good. So if you're working on SharePoint, maybe that's something. Maybe that's something you should try.
Does it make sense to have you walk us through the build a simple Teams flow with the adaptive card in it?
Yes.
Just something where it maybe somebody when somebody posts a message it replies got it. Something super simple that will kind of give us an idea of what the build a bot with an adaptive card process looks like. Does that seem like it would be of value to anybody else on the call? Thumbs up, thumbs down, yes, no?
I like to see how he does it with the VS Code too.
Okay, so
This is Stacy. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I'm in the process of writing a Outlook book, Microsoft Outlook, and I'm wondering, will this integrate with Outlook somehow, or can you think of some ways I could use that? I've used like Power Automate and stuff in there, so I'm wondering if I can integrate.
Yeah, it does. I don't have an example for that prepared. Let me see if I still have that somewhere. I don't think so. So there's one thing with adaptive cards. One second. Let me just find something here. Okay, so Outlook can natively render adaptive cards. That's something that's sent from the VS Code extension. So when you use the VS Code extension, there's that small send to Outlook button,
Okay.
and you can send a card to Outlook to see what it looks like.
So if you had a Power Automate script that you were using to build that, you could at any point in that Power Automate script fire off a card.
You can. The thing is that this looks like an email in Outlook, but it's not. You can only get that into Outlook by using the Microsoft Graph API. You cannot send it as a real email because, well, you technically can, but probably, in many cases, Exchange and antivirus things just kill the card because the card is technically sent as an in the email header, and that leads to a lot of problems. So you can only really do that with the Graph API. But there are ways. I can definitely send you an email after the session. I don't have it right now. I need to look it up because it's been a while since I used that. But there is an option to send a card to a person, and that leads to the person receiving the card in Outlook and Teams, for example. And I can send a card to a group, and then the card would appear in Outlook and in the group as well. So Outlook on the web, Outlook on the web at least can natively render cards, and that works pretty well. As far as I know, the Outlook desktop version.
So when you're saying that, so like for instance, I could send it through Outlook to have a questionnaire, or
Yeah.
what would the card be? Like, give me some examples of what you would send.
Oh, that
send it through Outlook.
anything you want really. You can have actions in the card as well. So you can, let me just some nice example here. Just that you can send someone this card by email, and the person can fill it out, click on submit, and the result would be sent to you in either the flow or a bot or whatever you're using really.
Okay.
Well, actually, I'm not sure if that's working with the flow already, but last time I checked, they're working on it at least. Not sure if that's available on Power Automate. It definitely works with a bot. I did that myself. So you can send someone a card. It would look like a normal email. You can fill it out. You can click on submit, and your bot would get the answer, and all that in Outlook. So yeah, you definitely can send questionnaires using adaptive cards with Outlook. The only downside is it only works in Outlook, because if you send someone, you can send a card by email, you can send a card to anyone, but if they're using Google Mail or whatever client to view the email, they wouldn't see the card because the card only works in Outlook. So as long as you're doing that internally or whatever, or to someone you know is using Outlook, then it works. But if the person is using like Google Mail or anything else, it doesn't work.
You could also just email a link to a team and have them view the card in the team channel.
Yeah, you can. Basically, Teams channel, Teams groups, anything in Teams really is able to render the cards. Outlook on the web is able to render the cards in the latest versions. Outlook desktop can render cards, but last time I checked, it's on a quite outdated version. So it's only adaptive cards 1.2, which doesn't have a lot of things the latest version have. Outlook, the Android Outlook app does render cards. I'm not sure about the iOS app because I didn't try it in ages. So yeah, if the person is using the official Outlook app on Android, so Android Mail as such not, but if you're using Outlook on Android, then you would get the card and could use it as well.
That answer your question, Stacy?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
If, as I said, if you have any, well, you can just reach out to me and send me a mail, and I probably can give you more input on that later on. That's just something I rarely do, so I don't know it out of my head right now.
So I think you earlier said that Viva was using adaptive cards. Does that mean that email that you got Tuesday is an adaptive card?
Sorry.
So at the top of your email list is that email from Viva. Is that built using adaptive cards, or is that just an email?
No, that's built as an adaptive card. Because what you're looking at right now is not an email. So if you go into Exchange and search for that, you wouldn't find it as an email. That's using the Graph API. Of course it does. Of course it's using the German version. I think it's that one.
We do appreciate you showing us the English version.
Sorry?
We do appreciate you showing us the English version.
That's pretty much what I'm using from the VS Code extension. You're sending a message to the inbox. So technically, it's sort of an email, but it never was sent using any email procedures. It's just sent using the Graph API, so it's technically added directly to the inbox. So if you do it like that, all the mail flow rules you might have in Exchange and all that are all skipped because you're technically adding it directly into the inbox. So it's not really sent as an email.
So you can go like in Power Automate and do like a send HTTP post request in there and just put in the URL and then that content type and then
yeah. You can, but as far as I remember, there is an action. Yeah, for whatever reason, Power Automate is really slower. Forward an email. That one. I'm not sure if it's that one. Well, you probably have to check. I'm not sure if it's that one. There, either in the official version or maybe it's still in preview. There was an action to do that, so you don't need to use an HTTP call. There was an action to do exactly that. So send an email. I'm not sure if there's the same like send an email and wait for the response. But they have been working on that. It's just that I didn't look for that in quite a while. So you might find that. But if there isn't a ready-made action, yes, you can always do that with HTTP calls as well. So yeah, that's.
So I just started getting some Viva stuff. Like I'm not familiar with Viva too much either, but I've started getting Viva notifications of things that I'm doing in my email. Are these action cards?
Some of them.
Because they look like it could be.
They are. Well, that technically is. I'm not sure if everything here is one adaptive card or if that's multiple adaptive cards. But at least that one here is an adaptive. So the done and remind me buttons and all that. That's an adaptive card. Yeah. So Viva is using adaptive cards extensively, like everywhere, really.
The fact that Microsoft does it doesn't mean that we can do it, but that gives us hope.
Yeah, exactly. That's
They sometimes have access to levers we don't have access to.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, because I'm looking at I don't remember how I even started getting Viva. Did it just start like I just started getting this a couple weeks ago? I don't even remember.
Yeah,
why.
Viva is something that was that's rolled out. I'm not sure if it's rolled out worldwide already, but they rolled it out in batches to various tenants.
It depends on what channel you're at. So whether you're adopter, standard, or slow, and then I believe that your tenant admin can turn it on or off. And so either Microsoft got to your channel and then your tenant within that channel, or an admin said, hey, let's try this out.
Well, in it's probably not a big deal for you guys, but in Germany, it's actually a big deal regarding data privacy.
Yeah, GDPR.
Yeah, because like with Viva, like Kevin, for example, if I send you an email, yeah, no worries, I'll take care of that. Then Viva will remind me the next morning, hey Tim, you said you told Kevin you would take care of that. Did you do that already? So that's how deep Viva is actually looking into what you are doing. So it actually, you just have to send someone a mail. Yes, I'll do that. And Viva will remind you of that. So Viva is actually reading your emails and parsing things you are writing, which is for some companies a big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what you're saying, Stacey. You suddenly get Viva emails telling you about things you probably should do or you need to do, and telling you all about your appointments and all these things. I mean, it really helps, yes. But for some, it's a big deal in a way.
But in terms of what we're talking about today, I think the idea that Microsoft has created that Viva email using one or more adaptive cards says that if they follow their usual pattern, if we don't have access to all of the levers to do that today, we will in the future.
Yeah.
And so, Stacey, if we talk about your use case, being able to interact with your end users in an email, I think that might be the future.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
There's one more thing that's it's available in beta, and you probably haven't seen it yet. I just remembered that. I think I don't have an example for that. Doesn't matter. If you heard of the Microsoft, I think it's called Fluid. Microsoft is working on a way to collaboratively work on things, pretty much. And if I use my beta stuff, I don't have it prepared. That's, yeah, sorry, but I can send you an example later. I can actually send someone a card to Teams and to Outlook simultaneously. So maybe, for example, I could send you a card, Stacy, and Kevin is looking at the same card sort of in Teams, and you can see the updates of each other. And they also do that with like Excel. I can send someone an Excel file using by email, and I post the same Excel file to a Teams channel, and whoever updates the Excel file, no matter where, really sees the current version of the Excel file straight away. So in past you would attach an Excel file to the email, and you would then later think, oh damn, I wanted to change something. Yeah, that's not a big deal anymore because the person always has the latest version of everything. And you can collaboratively work on that. One person by looking at the email, the next person in Teams, and the other person in Excel directly, and the same can be done with adaptive cards as well. So there's a lot more coming pretty soon, but much of that stuff is still in beta. Yeah.
Mind blown.
Yeah, that's one of the problems I have, sort of, because back when I started 2 years ago, it was pretty much only a thing for bots. So adaptive cards was mainly used to build bots, send these lovely bot messages we have here. That's pretty much what you use adaptive cards for in Microsoft environment, at least. Today, it's like crazy where you can find an adaptive card and what you can do with adaptive cards. So it's really hard to keep track of everything what's possible. Like even for me, and I'm just doing that in my free time, sort of. Well, and a little bit for customer projects, but if you want to really keep track of everything that's possible, that's a full-time job, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to show you. I'm not sure if you have Like, do you have any more question? Anything else you'd love to know about? I guess we still have a bit of time. Anything where you say, hey, I want to see that?
So it would appear to me that if I were an adaptive card rookie, I'd want to go to madewithcards.io and smash that button that says "Just get me started."
Yeah.
And follow that walkthrough and tutorial.
Yeah.
You are on Twitter, I believe, and
Yes.
I think I shared that in the invite to this meeting. And so as folks had questions, they could hit you on Twitter. And is there an adaptive card community somewhere else that you could point people? Like a Reddit community or something else?
Not really. Like if you have specific questions, Stack Overflow is always great. I tend to, I'm answering a lot of questions myself here frequently. There's Microsoft people answering questions here, so Stack Overflow is always great. These two Microsoft Learn sessions are really great. I helped refine these myself. So that's if you're really new to, if you're a rookie, going through these two sessions might really help, because I think they're really good, useful. That's Tomasz, the other guy I was talking about earlier. He's pretty much whenever you want to do something with adaptive cards and Power Automate, he's the guy to go to. He's even the guy I go to when I have questions. So like there's a YouTube channel with a ton of examples. So that's also a really great place to look at. And yeah, basically that's everything here. And the last thing is that for adaptive cards, no, that was the wrong link actually. Yeah, the stuff in Microsoft Docs, despite often being not really up to date, all the adaptive card stuff in here is actually pretty good. Like if you want to render a card yourself, if you want to use a card really as a developer to build some stuff based on adaptive cards, it really helps you to, all the explanations here are really good. So even that might be a good place to start.
And if we search in the plugin library for VS Code for adaptive cards, we'll get that add-on you were showing us, right?
Yeah, that's it's also on the page as well. So if you go here, there's the extension as well, and there's a link to the marketplace.
Perfect.
So it's also on there.
Perfect. Any last questions for Tim before we let him go to bed, way past his bedtime?
I have another question, Tim. Where do you see this, like, with our average workers, like not a developer? Do you see this being picked up down the road with?
I would say so, yes. Well, I know a few things I can't talk about right now, but
So how do we get that out of you?
you don't,
Okay.
especially not when things go to YouTube. The thing is, it's more, well, adaptive cards are coming up more and more often. There's Microsoft is trying to make it more end user friendly in a way. Like I've heard something they might do something like you can use cards in Power Apps, for example. There might be something like that soon. I don't know, but maybe.
So Tim, if I could answer Stacy's question, I might say it this way: it depends on the user.
Yeah.
Adaptive cards are licensed for every end user to use. There's no licensing considerations like there might be with the Power App, and they plug into Flow, into Power Automate. There are licensing considerations in Power Automate, but for most of us that are on any kind of an enterprise level of Power Automate, we generally have a sea of licensing that we can use. The example I might point to, Stacy, we had a guy in our finance department that went out, and then there are a couple of folks here from my company that are on the phone and are laughing inside, maybe a little bit in pain. he went out and created this whole audit application that we then later had to try and dig into and figure out what he had done. And so I could see somebody like that using a card like this to enhance their application, but it's going to be somebody that's fairly bright and fairly technical and figure it out. There's nothing to stop them from being able to use it.
Yeah. And if you're using Power Virtual Agents, for example, Power Virtual Agents can also work with cards. I just remembered that. I don't have a working instance right now. So there are lots of things even you can do with adaptive cards, even if you're not a developer at all.
And that example does have license considerations.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah. Let's not talk about that.
Any other questions? Okay, well let's call it a Tuesday then. The Tuesday with all the twos in it.
And a Wednesday.
And a Wednesday for Tim, who is up way past his bedtime, as I might have said at least once. Tim, I appreciate you coming to share your knowledge with us and being able
No
to
worries at all.
and being able to respond to post-meeting questions. As always, thanks to all of you that showed up. We really are looking for a session next month. So if you don't want to get the best of Kev's dad jokes, then send us a note. You can send it to the info@utahsharepoint.org email or Google my name and send it to me directly. We meet as a board a week from Thursday, so that gives you about 10 days to give us what you want us to find an expert to share with you. Any last questions? I'm going to kill the recording. We'll see you on YouTube.
Yes.
Thanks for the time, everyone. Bye.